Good morning, everyone. This is Diane Stephanie Bukog, and today we will be going to discuss in our subject GE-6 or the art appreciation. And today we will going to tackle about the lesson 2, and it is all about the functions and philosophies of art. So sooner and later, as we dig deeper in our lesson, we will know its functions and how does philosophy relate to art. So let us begin our discussion. But before we proceed to that, let us first know our learning objectives. So firstly, we have the knowledge. We have to identify and explain the different functions and philosophies of art. What are those functions and how does philosophies has relations when it comes to art? So for the skills, we also have to analyze artworks to determine their purpose, meaning, and impact. So we all know naman na every art has its own background yun. So it is not just made just because it is made to be made, but every art has its distinction and functions nga man na siyang nahimo. Alright, so for the attitude, we need to appreciate and respect diverse interpretation and cultural expressions of art. So makabaluta about the different cultures and how does art relate to that specific areas and many more. Alright, but before we begin to our main topic of this lesson, may I ask you first about this question. Can something still be considered art if it has no function? Well, if you answer both that it is not and it is still considered as art even though it has no function, then it's either between the two. If you choose, then you are still right. Why? Because let me give you an example. So just like a man crafted a chair made of recycled plastics. So because of his own creativity, so he add beauty in it. So dili na lang siya makonsidered na beautiful art, but it also serves as a function to us human individuals. So simply, unatay gamon, pwede na to siyang malingkuran. So it has a function that serves as human individuals. Now for considered on manong dili siya matawag ng art ug wala siya function. Just like an example of an abstract painting. So unsa na may kuan ana, di ba? Wala na siya function nga mahatag nato. However, as human individuals as we are, it can serve as the interpretations that we need, the creativity, and it can also highlights us and gives us the mga entertainment just of its beauty. Even though from the abstract, and even though nga how messy and how we get curious to figure out such an abstract painting, it still serves us as one of those entertainment. So that's the difference between function and if it still be considered art if it is not, if it is has no function. Alright. So, the functions of art. Every art form has a definite function since it satisfies a particular need. To the layman, art may have little functions. Some find meaning in art and its ability to serve the purpose for which it was designed. So obviously, architecture is directly and almost entirely functional because buildings and other structures are always built for some special purposes. So here's an example. Like you yourself as an architect. So, di ba, balik ang daghang mga plates sa imong table. So, yes, it is considered as an art because it is a man-made. Now, it is considered as one of the functions of art because it is not just about how you sketch, but once that it is made, like for example, imo nang mga kuan, magawa na tayo mohang plates, then it is already become a house because the constructor has already an outline kung unsa ni siya pagama. Now, the magama na ang imong balay, nang nana kay mapuy-an, you can live there with your family and create more memories, so it becomes functional to you as a human individuals. So mao na siya, ingana siya ka-importante, and how does functions relate to such arts. Alright, so there are 7 functions of art, and namely they are, we have the first, we have the aesthetic function. So through art, man becomes conscious of the beauty of nature. So he benefits from his own artwork and from those done by his fellow men. So he leans to use, love, and preserve them for his enjoyment and appreciation. Alright, so we all know naman na as human as we are, we always seeks for pleasure, enjoyment, growth, and many more. So, it tackles here from the aesthetic function na as we grow old, we also learn from different people around us. So, because as we grow old in life, our curiosity also grows. So, kay ang atong curiosity kay mag-grow man, so it triggers us as human individuals na mo grow. So we keep on doing things para mo improve ta, and that's where your aesthetic functions of art begins. So just like an example, paintings in galleries. So like in museums mo bisita, so di ba dagan kay naka-display ng mga paintings. So ingana sila ka creativity, and also we notice nga lahi ra jud ang ilang mga painting compared sa atoa. So because sometimes we compare ourselves to others, but let us also remember na wala pud sila diha karon if wala sila gagikan from a beginner. So every pro begins with small footsteps. So as human as we are, if you're also an artist, so I encourage you not to give up sab. Kay growth is amazing, but growth without pain or without suffering is not considered growth. Alright? So, another example is garden designing or landscaping. So, kinsa to tong mga plantito diha. So, muna sila, especially sa atong mga mama, papa, auntie, or uncle, nga hilig kay og mga garden. So, muna sila, kanang dili ra na ma-considered na ga-design na sila pahimutang, but it is also considered as an art na ay. Alright, so now let's move on to our second. So we have here the utilitarian function. So with the creation of the various forms of art, man now lives in comfort and happiness. Through art, man is provided with shelter, clothing, food, light, medicine, beautiful surroundings, personal ornamentals, entertainment, language, transportation, and other necessities and conveniences of life. Alright, so an example of this is buildings and houses. So the ay kay through forms of art, as human as we are, we can now live in comfort. Kay lagi through art sab na tay mga na tay makabot na nato atong mga gusto sa kinabuhi, just because it's not just simplicity of art, but it serves as the functions nga once that it is made. So mao na lagi ni ang mga buildings and houses which are from different people. They sketch yung una based on the design, then another na pod nga mga person nga magama for that specific art, then also clothing and fashion. So just like anang mga pageants, other graduations, and other many more occasions. So through art, ma-provided na jud sa atong mga comfort, clothes, because art exists, and such people with creativities exist in this world. So that's what utilitarian function. Now, as I add on, we also have this subjective beauty or the subjective aesthetic judgment. So what does it mean? So it is mean that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So what's meant or what may appeal to one another may not appeal to one another, may not appeal to another person. So just like an example, no, I see something that is beautiful, but the eye kay ugly dahil na siya sa panglantaw sa uban. So that's the subjective judgment partakes. So not all we consider beautiful may not be beautiful as well from the others. So that's what we call subjective judgment. All right, so moving on, we have the third, which is the cultural function. So through art, the printed matter, art transmits and preserves skills and knowledge from one generation to another. It makes man aware of his cultural background, making him more knowledgeable, making his life more enduring and satisfying. Alright, so we are now tackling about the cultural function. So, unsa man ni? Just like an example about traditional dances, festivals and costumes, we have the sinulog, panagbenga, unsa pa na inagta, unsa pa na other and many more traditional dances. So, di ba? Nagkalain-lain ang mga designs from the costumes, from the unsa na yung mga props that are used. So, maka-realize jud ta on how does art relates to us individuals, kung asa ta gagikan, and also determines us or nanggapahayag kung unsa gud ta or asa ta the growth. So just like sinulo, unsa man na anangga mura taga kuan, that is also always celebrated during the January. And also it shows our hope, prosperity, and forgiving, and love. So through art, something is colored with different creativities because of such talented persons. So that's very important why we have to know the functions and the differences when it comes to arts. So, ingana siya ka-importante as human individuals as we are. So, that would be all my assigned report, and the rest will be reported by my fellow members. Thank you.